Hi, everyone. I'm here with Kushner, award-winning author, keynote speaker, and creator of the Linked Vantage system, helping professionals turn LinkedIn into a consistent client-generating platform. Featured on ABC, Fox, NBC, and CBS, he's delivered 100-plus keynotes on topics like LinkedIn growth, AI leadership, sales transformation, and personal branding. With over 50 podcast appearances and features in AI Journal and Journal of Financial Planning, Al brings actionable, ROI-driven insights that help leaders convert digital presence into measurable business growth. So here we are to talk about AI and LinkedIn today. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you, John. Appreciate the opportunity.
And funny enough, that's also happens to be similar to the title of your new book, The AI Advantage, I think it is. And, when we were sort of discussing there, there's obviously AI that's coming into play in all leadership decisions now across the organization. I think everyone's trying to reduce costs, right? Improve efficiency. That's what we're seeing in most P&Ls now is how can we improve efficiency? How can we streamline workflows and so on? How are leaders looking at LinkedIn and AI in terms of two tools they can use right now?
Well, certainly AI is a great time saver because it's a way to create content on the fly. It'll give you great ideas and it'll help you to create scripts of videos. It could help you reply to posts from influencers. So it has a lot of great possibilities if you use it the right way. You can really do it quite justice on your profile.
What do you say to people that argue, there's a lot of AI slop? That's the term now I see people saying it's AI slop. There's a lot of AI use that you can totally tell it's been created by AI, and people are getting turned off by just the ubiquitous nature of it. It's everywhere. It's I think we've overdone it with how much it's being used, and people are not using original thought in their brand building now. So what's the correct use of AI with your social media and so on?
Well, of course, being authentic is important, but relying on only one technology, for example, instead of multiple AIs, is going to pretty much be a dead giveaway right there, particularly with ChatGPT, which has a certain way of writing that can be easily found as AI written. But I use multiple AI technologies. And at the end, I use my own authentic voice, which comes across as realistic and informative. So that's important. You should only use the AI technology as a way to help you ideas and construct sentences. But original thought and putting your own authenticity into it is what's going to make it more realistic for people to read.
Yeah, it makes sense. We can't just go straight from ChatGPT and cut and paste. I think there has to be a bit of a nuance to it and review, editorializing, I guess.
Of course.
What would you say to, executives now that are like, okay, I need to start building my personal brand? It's a topic where like everyone hears that a lot, but what does it mean in terms of LinkedIn, for someone that's not tech savvy or comfortable with social media? I mean, what do you tell them?
I tell them that to get on the bandwagon and hire me to help them optimize the profile. Because the fact is that they're not doing it, their competition is, and they're going to be left behind. That's simply put. There's no way of avoiding it. And the fact is that with LinkedIn right now, close to over 1 billion users, it's pretty much a go-to for most, businesses that are looking to connect with someone and they want to see, profiles that they can respect and admire. And that really is going to make a difference. They really need to step up the game when it comes to optimizing the profile.
So what would you say is some tips in terms of like optimization? What would you say is like the first step they would be doing,
I would say, certainly get a current headshot would be helpful. Look at your background image. A lot of people seem to ignore that, but it's a very excellent billboard opportunity to showcase some of the things that you help people with, which would be right off the bat. I use AI to analyze the actual profile itself and to look for keywords that one might look for someone who's searching for that individual. Because LinkedIn itself is a search engine for the most part. So a lot of times, for example, people who are looking to be guests on a podcast, they may look at your profile and look for keywords that may come up, and if it's not in there, you won't be found. I mean, that's simply put. So you got to optimize off the bat, and that'll help you get found and without spending money on advertising.
Yeah, there's definitely that sort of SEO yourself aspect to LinkedIn of making sure your search engine optimized. You have the keywords for the job title you're going for, and there's definitely tools you can use and some thought that needs to be put towards it. But in terms of the networking aspect, that's something I think people are not, maybe not everyone's comfortable with doing, or they don't know how to go about it, right? So what's sort of your thoughts in terms of how does a new person that just coming on LinkedIn start networking?
Well, after they optimize their profile and you want to do any type of outreach, they should first start looking at groups that they can join on LinkedIn, because there are a lot of groups that they may be interested in being part of. That is where their potential clients are if they're a business owner. So I look to join groups. And once accepted into the group, I look for ways to give towards that group community. What I do is I create videos that are usually anywhere from 30 to 90 seconds on the average long, that are all about you know, with LinkedIn, for example, and helping them touch on pain points that are concerns for their members. And if you have a business and you have certain pain points that are helping your clients, maybe share that information. That would be very helpful. The key thing is to give more than you receive, and the groups will usually accept you as long as you're respecting the members. And that means don't spam them, provide information that's of value, and don't try to sell. In the videos itself, just be educational. You'll find more success that way.
So I guess the networking strategy is give before you expect to receive, and look for insights you can give to people that are in your network or in your industry that you're trying to find opportunities in, right? So
Yep. Yep.
that
Great.
makes sense.
Great content, great case studies. These are all examples of showing you as a thought leader, and that's what you'll gain the respect of those people who you're trying to connect with.
And so for when you talk about case studies, though, I mean, if you're not a business, how would you do that from a personal branding standpoint? Like create a case study? Is this like some of your own work that you'd create?
Yeah, you can use that. You can use Perplexity Labs and talk about a recent success story that you have, and you can use that as example, and people will really look forward to reading it. If you have something that resolved an issue for business, there's no reason why you can't share that in the case study. That will help highlight some of the things that you help solve.
No, it makes sense. And so, what about with the use of AI? Like, we talked about obviously networking, building your LinkedIn, leveraging that. How do you leverage that now to create, inbound traffic or inbound leads or business opportunities? Right.
Simple. You can use the AI technology to help create scripts for videos, create articles, create content for the newsletter. Hopefully, you're sending out a newsletter every week. That would be a great starting point, because that's probably the most underused tool on LinkedIn, and it gets really a lot of great reach beyond LinkedIn itself directly into inboxes, because LinkedIn has such a high authority. It kind of bypasses the spam filter. So, not utilizing that is going to be not to your advantage.
Yeah, I think the newsletter piece is something I see it going around often. I'm not sure if people are actually reading those or not. That's another story. I mean, it's there's some tactics around that, right? In terms of building a newsletter.
Yeah, I send out about 5 newsletters a week to 5 different referral partners that I work with, and I noticed the views that it receives. So it does give you some idea or feedback of people reading it, and it's just a matter of being consistent with that. You do it once a week. People look forward to that. It's helping you build your brand by establishing you as a thought leader.
How long do you think it takes to get a newsletter actually have some effect in terms of lead gen or whatnot?
Well, newsletters are like for the long game. I would say that the key is consistency. Some newsletters get traction. I see by the amount of people who are subscribing. For example, I have a newsletter that is with financial planners, and that has close to over 500 subscribers, and I see it growing exponentially compared to other newsletters I've had. So obviously, something's resonating well with the information. So that's a good sign right there. And it's just a way to create a way to establish yourself as a thought leader, by creating the content, and that really helps.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I guess it depends on the topic as well in terms of like how much interest there's going to be. Some niche topics are not as popular as others, I guess.
Yeah, well, touch on pain points that are concerns for your particular audience. That's really what's going to be helpful. And we'll also talk about some of the latest things that are happening in industry. For example, right now, what's affecting a lot of business owners is travel. what's going on with the TSA and how
Oh, yeah.
people are dealing with, the reductions that are going to be taking place. So there's a lot of business owners, they travel. So that's always a hot topic of concern. Maybe share some insights that could be helpful for those who are, you know, planning on going to events and other things. These are
Yeah. Are people opting to drive or take the train instead now? Is that a thing or?
Well, if it depends. I imagine, I know if in my situation, I would avoid flying at all possible until things get resolved because it's really a nightmare. You've seen on TV what's going on there.
Oh,
Three,
yeah.
4 hours waiting in line. I mean, just to get to a flight, and then flights getting canceled. I mean, that's just unreasonable. So, and if you don't have a choice, obviously, maybe look for alternative transportation, trains, buses, distance. Those are especially with holidays coming up. It's going to be really interesting to see what's going to be happening.
Well, hopefully things get resolved soon because holiday travel's a thing. I definitely want to go on a vacation in the new year, and I'll be traveling through probably Philly or New York to get to my destinations.
Who
Hopefully,
knows?
yeah, I know that would be bad. So, looking at the LinkedIn sort of, maybe you can give us a rundown of your like LinkedIn Advantage system in terms of like, accelerating pipeline, how do you create digital sales through it? What are some steps you would say that are, or, just like an overflow, a workflow in terms of what people should be doing with LinkedIn on that? Is there like a weekly checklist you have people run through or activity list that
Well,
you're like,
actually, I created a profile worksheet that people can access for free. It's at my website, linkvantage.com/audit. It's a free worksheet that I created. It'll give you some insights on how to optimize your profile because that's essential. You have to have a foundation before you do any outreach. So once you have that information and use it, optimize it, you'll find that when you do make connections, most likely people will accept that, which is a good thing. But in addition to that, I would look to join for groups on LinkedIn. And also, if you want to build any type of credibility, get recommendations. Very few people do that, and that's important for third-party awareness. Third-party validation.
yeah.
So make a concerted effort to get recommendations on LinkedIn, which I think is definitely a step in the right direction.
No, it makes sense. I mean, you got to build a solid foundation if you're going to be networking. But then let's say they've done all that, right? They've got their optimized LinkedIn page. They have recommendations. They've started doing thought leadership posts and videos, or they're doing all the things. What kind of outreach and what kind of things should they be doing in terms of driving sales on LinkedIn? I mean, one thing I've definitely seen is just from a content perspective on LinkedIn, the total impressions you're going to see is probably like half what it was last year. I know for me, I've looked at my analytics and my impression count is literally more than half down from 2024. They've changed the algorithm, right? So you're seeing less engagement and so on. It can be pretty disheartening when you're used to seeing so many likes and follows and reposts and all that. Now it's diminished. But what's changed and what would you recommend in terms of like outreach strategy for people that are trying to grow their business, like on LinkedIn?
Well, you got to give what the algorithm loves. And you know what the algorithm loves? They love videos. So you got to start making videos instead of those posts. It won't get ignored and it'll be appreciated. Anywhere from 30 seconds to 90 seconds is a sweet spot. I do videos 4 times a week into groups. Okay. And I see the traction, if anything, increasing, and that's going to set you apart from the competition. So get started with videos. That's going to be a game changer, I think, because that's what the algorithm wants to see. And that'll help you grow exponentially as an example.
No, it makes sense. I guess it's becoming more like Facebook and Instagram now. Everyone likes the short little reels. It seems to be so. As a business person now, it's like everyone has to be an entertainer. You have to be able to come on and make video clips and record content. Now we're all doing that. It's almost obligatory, I guess, for an executive at
I
this
would
level.
say so. I mean, because your competition is doing it. So the fact is that the algorithm is exactly asking for it. So if you're going to keep on doing the same old thing, you're not going to get any traction. All you'll see as resulting, half, if anything, visits or views. So you need to really step up your game. And there's no reason why you cannot do video. And it doesn't necessarily have to be yourself on there. For example, you have a podcast. You can turn that into an audiogram, for example, and post that on, into a group. I do that, all the time. And I find people are very, receptive to getting that. And it is a video, but in the form of an audiogram. And that is something that people look forward to because it's educational and it's something, and your podcast is educational. And by showcasing 30-second clip of, highlight of an episode, you'll be quite surprised how much traction you'll get and a lot more visitors to listen to your podcast.
Yeah. No, I mean, we do try to make a couple, viral clips from every episode for sure. I mean, it's the tools now are pretty intuitive in terms of like cutting them up, and with Riverside and some of these other AI kind of tools, they'll take a full length video and they'll create you some highlights automatically. You don't even have to think about it. So it's a pretty good system now for doing these kind of things. So I get that. I guess the biggest thing is just getting comfort in front of the camera for a lot of people. Like they don't have that, right? So you've been on TV before and all that. How do you get in the mindset of, okay, now I'm recording content on the regular? How do you sort of change that shift in your mindset of,
Well, there's
you
no
know,
reason why you can't do audio. I do an audiogram and I feature a logo. For example, I have a podcast that I just launched recently, and I have 4 episodes each week, and I drop 30-second clips, but it has, the logo of the episode and it has my voice. And I don't have to, appear on there. The information is what people are looking for. Audio is still a very relevant medium and a powerful one, I would say the least. If anything, a lot of people listen to podcasts like this in their car, driving or walking. So there's no reason you can't get the word out through this form of communication. It works quite well.
yeah, no, it makes sense. And I guess I would ask you also for advice in terms of like how you've been able to leverage, let's say, your coaching and your other work to get into keynote speaking. For, let's say, for the executives out there listening right now, that they're like, oh, I'd love to be a keynote speaker. I'd love to get on TV and so on. Like, how do you go about building up your appearances to get these opportunities like you've gotten? How do you do that?
Well, two things: write a book, which is what I've done. That's going to set you apart right there. Have a podcast, or better yet, have both. Okay, and you'll find that alone will help set you apart from the competition because that's exactly what you're competing with out there. And for event planners and meeting planners, that's the first thing they're going to look at is why should they hire you?
Yeah, makes total sense. So I guess for executives out there, they're like, wow, there's so many new things they need to be doing now as an executive to compete, right? It's like I have to have a perfect profile. I need to start creating content of some kind, getting out there, even writing a book. I've had a lot of people ask me to do that, and I'm like, well, I can get around to it at some point, but do you recommend using external publishers to support on that? I think there's a lot of these pay for play publishers. Pay five up to 30,000, I think, and they'll do all the editing and get the book together for you and so on. Or you can self publish as well, right? With Amazon, I think there's ways to do it.
Yeah, you can do that, but it's something that, it requires, if you're going to hire a ghostwriter, find out what work they've done before, have they won any awards with their books, and whether or not it justifies the cost. And I've, ghostwritten books for other executives and, they loved it, and what's the most famous book out there right now? The Art of the Deal? Well, that was written or authored by Trump, but I believe he had a ghostwriter, I believe, had written that.
Yeah, I think so. I read that book a long time ago. Before he was president, I read it.
There you
Yeah.
go. Well, and the reason why, because that's setting himself as an authority, at least as an author. So here's an example of someone who uses that to, create opportunities that would be grateful. Again, you have a podcast, you have a lot of content in your podcast. You could certainly turn that into a book. I mean, there's no reason why you have plenty of content with the right editing team. You get a graphic designer, you can get it launched under 90 days. I mean, that's really no excuse not to do it.
Yeah, well, it makes total sense. So I mean, I guess it depends on, for everyone that's listening, it's like think about what kind of value you can bring. You gotta also think of like, do people want to read this book? Unless it's like a memoir or something, which for some people that have had long careers, it's kind of nice to write something like that. I think maybe for people that are close to retirement, they're thinking, well, I'm okay to write all this tea now, all this, this dirt that I've had my whole life, been thinking about. I can say it now because I don't care what people think anymore. I'm near retirement, so I'll lay it all out there in a nice memoir. But for people that are working, I guess they're thinking more of, what kind of book can I put out right now that would be an interesting book that's relevant to my audience and obviously help my career as well, right? Did you, in terms of planning for your book and so on, I mean, is there a recommended length right now for these kind of, let's say, thought leadership books? They typically say, well, it's got to be this many pages at least, and you want to distribute it on online channels, or like you have both paperback and online, I'm assuming.
Yeah, and audiobook as well. So
Nice.
ebook. So I have four different way: print, hardcover copy, and to do something in print, word count should be at least a minimum of 40,000 words or 50,000. I would say that was roughly anywhere from 250 to 300 pages. But again, sometimes people prefer shorter versions, so there's no reason why you can't do short books under 100 pages. It all depends on what your strategy and what you're looking to accomplish with that. So, but it's
Yeah.
possible, and you can
And
certainly
how long
supplement.
did it take you to write your latest one?
Well, it's over a year, I would say, and it's not my first rodeo book, first book out there. It's like 10th
Yeah.
book out there, so I've had some
Nice.
experience in doing with that. But I can tell you, nowadays it's much easier to write a book now than it was 10 years ago. So
Yeah.
if anything, you have no excuse not to do it, because years ago it'd be almost impossible because of the amount of books you'd have to buy, and now you can print books on demand. I mean, it's incredible that the possibility. So even if you make a mistake, you can always change it. But imagine, doing a first run and you got to get 500 books and you kind of a typo or something in there. Well, guess what? Back to the drawing board. You just waste all that money. So nowadays it's much more easier to do, and incredible that the technology is available. Especially audio has become a long way. Audiobooks have been really taking off, particularly on Spotify. So you could turn your book into an audiobook, and you'd be quite surprised the reach that you would get with that.
Yeah, it's funny enough, I've actually stopped reading physical books and gone straight into like the audiobooks just because I'm driving a lot. And so it's a way to listen and, sort of zone out when you're driving and hear a story or something, it's kind of nice, but it's just funny how we've changed the mediums now, and now, as you said, like being able to print on demand, I think that's huge, right? So it saves you money than having to hold inventory, where I've seen some authors where they print off a whole bunch of books, and then they're like, then you see them on the discount aisle for $1 after, because they're like, well, we got to get rid of them. They got too many. So I've seen that before. And there must be a substantial cost too to buying 500 books in print right off the bat. There's that risk as well for yourself. But how are you competing though with all the AI slop? Again, AI slop that's been, I've heard, for example, on Spotify, there's something like 130 million songs, and they just took down, I think, 50 million songs that were just created with AI, because there was a lot of AI garbage just being created and thrown on Spotify. Same thing with books, I imagine, right? You go on Amazon bookstore, there's all these new AI written books. The whole book is written by AI, and they're trying to sell it for like $10 to cash in on different topics. You can churn them out pretty fast, right? With ChatGPT, a business and so on. Has that affected business, like book sales, you think, or is that affecting like retail books or?
Well, I think there is, I guess a place for that. But the fact is that if it's all AI generated, most of the time it'll be unreadable, no authenticity at all. A lot of incorrect information too. So because they don't need to check the facts, that's something that AI should be a tool to use to create ideas for content, but you should also be authentic in what you're giving into it, and that really is pretty much can be solved by the amount of reviews that a book has received. I mean, if you're getting, all negative reviews, it's going to be obvious that book is either AI generated or not even consider any thought to it. So you really want to produce something that's going to be something you be proud about. That's really what's important.
So let's say you're an executive and you finally say, okay, I'm going to write a book because I think it's going to help my branding and so on. What what would you measure as success for your first book? Like for a new author, let's say in business, and they're like, okay, I'm going to write a book. What would you take as success going away from that? Like, oh, I got some leads out of it, or I sold 500. I mean, I don't know what would you like for yourself as well? Like, what are the benchmarks for success for this, so that you didn't waste your time writing it?
Well, I look at the reviews that I received, any awards that I received also for putting it out, for organizations that have hired me as a speaker and bought my book or books in advance. These are just clear examples of what success looks like. So if you find that if you're using it as a way to get speaking engagements, well, that is tremendous. For the most part, a lot of people, write books at a loss because they just want to get an opportunity to speak in front of groups. So, but I think they should really put a lot of effort into the book so they can be proud about it and use it as a combination to create, opportunities that they never had before. Just think about it. If I'm competing with another speaker out there, the speaker doesn't have a book, I'm going to definitely win out over that speaker. The speaker doesn't even have a podcast. Well, guess what? So having a book or even a podcast is going to give you much more leverage for speaking opportunities compared to those out there who don't have that. So that's going to be really making a difference. Is it worth it? It just depends on what your objectives are. If you're looking to get paid to be in front of groups and organizations where you get anywhere from five to 10,000 or $20,000 for a speech, that's nothing wrong with that at all. Unless you're a celebrity or something, the fact is that it's going to be very difficult to do it without at least a book in your repertoire of skills that you have to offer.
Yeah, I mean, I always hear the stories of, some past presidents going out there on a speaking tour and making $1 million a speech and so on. But for us normal people, if you get 5 to 10, that's pretty good pay for a few hours of your time, right? To go and do a keynote. So I get that. It's like you write the book to create other opportunities. It may not create sales initially for you, maybe, but it will open up other doors, right? In terms of networking, in terms of appearances and so on. And that all helps your personal brand, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So for someone that's just starting off with their personal brand, and obviously LinkedIn's one part of it, but what about like personal branding websites? Is that something you recommend to clients to work on, or that's separate from their companies they work at? Is having their own personal branding website.
Well, I mean, if it's like a side business or something that they created for themselves, or
Maybe more just to highlight all their appearances and their books and their work and their content, thought leadership articles and so on, blogs. Like a blog is another sort of medium that people can use, right? Is blogs no longer something you recommend, or
to be honest with that, I mean, you have very rare that I would read blogs nowadays. I mean, I'm more audio person myself, so I'll listen to a podcast, I'll listen to an audiobook, while I'm doing things. I learn from that. Everybody's different depending on their circumstance. Certainly there's a place for blogs, but I think that it's a combination of things that you need to do. In particular on LinkedIn, you have articles written. You should at least have that on part of your profile. If you've had videos created, if you have any volunteer work that you've done with nonprofits, that's also well received. These are all things that are going to help establish yourself as a thought leader. And that's what you would look to do to create a profile that is standing out among the competition.
okay, no, it makes sense. I guess you got to research your industry and see where people are active in, or what's like different industries are have different sort of cultures about them. Like I know, for example, like in the construction industry, it's pretty old school still. There's those networking events people go to and trade shows and stuff like that. While in other industries, it's a little bit different in terms of how people interact with each other. You got to kind of go where your audience is, right? Whether it's a blog or podcast and so on. But surprisingly enough, on the marketing side, we've been told get on TikTok, get on Instagram, which were channels that we thought were always for CPG products and so on. But now it seems even for exec search that may be a thing, in terms of using it as a medium. So you're going to see, reels and stuff on there as well from us to sort of capture that audience, because apparently business people use TikTok too, right? Surprisingly enough, everyone's just doom scrolling, I guess, all day on the internet
Yeah,
instead of working.
yeah, pretty much.
So, we're discussing sort of that LinkedIn, and the LinkedIn Advantage piece, but then I think you also done a lot of work in terms of using AI in terms of reshaping decision making, and AI in leadership. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, with AI, it can actually help you create, again, as I mentioned, content for newsletters, content for posting, as well as scripts for videos. So these are things that are going to help establish yourself as a thought leader, because that's exactly what people are looking for. You're a problem solver. Solve the problems or the pain points that people are experiencing, and you'll find people be, trusting what you have to offer, which is important. Gaining trust is the key to success on LinkedIn.
How about more from the decision making pace in terms of like how to reshape your decision making from like as an executive? Is that something you've thought about in terms of using AI as part of your like another tool in leadership, you know?
Well, absolutely. I use AI agents, particularly GEMS from Gemini, to create a team of advisors that I have at my disposal 24/7. And I take some of the best people in the field available, like Gary Vee and Tony Robbins and some of the other individuals in the marketing and influence areas, and get their information and able to create an AI agent based on their content and ask them questions that they would know the answers based on their whether they're books or blogs or information online. And you can do that with AI nowadays and have really a team of advisors at your disposal that can help any individual who wants to become a thought leader have the holding hands with AI technology that has been there and done that. So that's really a great opportunity now.
Yeah, it's interesting the whole AI agent creation process. It's something that wasn't accessible before, but I think now for a pretty low cost, you can get into the game, and there's pretty intuitive in terms of how to build one too. It's in an afternoon you could build one, right, for yourself.
Yeah, or just a few hours. It's really a matter of what your focus is on. So if you are looking for a marketing guru, you take the top person in their field and use as an example and create an AI agent based on their teachings, their books, their content. And you want someone who can maybe do press releases and reach out to someone who is a specialist in that area, or in networking. Reach out to people who've been there. And what's great about it is that you have access to this, and the AI will only take the information you feed into it. It's not going to get from other external sources. With Notebook LM, you can actually feed it the content of the sources, and it'll only use that content specifically, nothing external. So it doesn't create issues of authenticity. It's going to really get it from the information you feed it. So that, I think, is crucial for creating a successful AI agent.
Yeah, I guess this kind of begs the question, and devil's advocate on that is what we think is the ethical use of AI, and what is private information versus public domain, and is it okay to use public domain things to help you, or to build these agents and so on. That's something I always wonder about: is how are we going to regulate AI, and what's your thoughts on sort of the future of regulation, like with all of this? Because it seems like, from what I heard initially, right? ChatGPT, OpenAI, and a lot of these companies, they basically went on the internet and grabbed any available info they could get to train the AI they're using, right? Some of it was copyrighted, some of it was maybe behind paywalls, or a lot of information that probably people didn't want to be used to train the AI models. And they took a lot of liberties with this, right? And now I know there is a setting as well in ChatGPT that you can actually set it whether you want it to be having your conversation as private, or if it's going to be used to train the AI model that you're using at the same time, right? So what's your thoughts on like the future of regulation when it comes to all this stuff? Because it seems like social media, we did a terrible job. We're still haven't even regulated this. So I think this is like wishful thinking, maybe, that we're going to have proper AI regulation in the next 5 years or something.
Well, certainly it is intellectual property, and one should be aware if it's being used for these purposes and how to be able to control that aspect of it. And it's kind of still a gray area, I would say, for the most part. Will it be regulated? It's hard to say, because there is, I think, the issue came out in the 90s with Napster, when it used music from other sources,
Oh
and it
yeah.
was great, but without Napster, there wouldn't be Spotify. Things evolve, So I believe there may be places where the people who own the copyrights can get paid for their use of their material, in a way that is rewarding for the individual who is creating the content. So I believe that is yet to be developed, but I think that's the future. Just like in the past, what worked then illegally became legal now, and that's really a good thing.
That makes sense. And actually, it's a probably an easy, well, not I would say easy, but it's seems like a fair way for them to set up a royalty kind of system with it, because if you're using data from specific sources, then they should get some kind of revenue for it, or you know some kind of share of the revenue. So that makes sense, because these AI platforms are not creating any information of themselves. They're basically collating it's a language model, right? It takes everything that's out there and it builds bits and pieces of different content to make it sound good and so on, right? It's, the whole idea of real AI is not here yet. Artificial general intelligence, I think that's going to be a whole new world when that arrives. So we're in the LLM model phase where it's basically copying everything off the net and repurposing it, right? So that seems like an interesting way of regulating things. Maybe you should go to the government and be part of that. Tell them we gotta set up some kind of royalty system, and we can set it up with a private enterprise. We'll set it up, and
Well, that's what happened. Like I
there's
said,
a
with
yeah.
Napster, and so there's no reason why they can't do that with the information available. And that's really where I see the direction taking. So creators can still create and be compensated for their work. I think that is definitely a good thing for everyone in the end.
No, it makes sense. Well, that's really good. And maybe final thoughts here, for we were saying how, if you're not doing content, if you're not thinking about, let's say, new ways to get yourself out there as an executive, you're kind of behind the eight ball with your competition, right? The competition is writing books. The competition is doing keynotes. The competition is doing podcasts. And not everybody, but definitely the ones that are getting the most, let's say, revenue and sales from their personal brand are seeing that. What would you say for someone that hasn't started yet and maybe is afraid to do the first step? How do you get out there if you're especially for introverts? This is not their comfort zone.
Well, procrastination, of course, is the problem that a lot of them face, and they have to really take it on and decide for themselves that if they don't get on the wagon now, they're going to be left behind. And same thing, back 100 years ago, where people were still using candles in their home and electricity came around, and those decided that they don't want to deal with electricity. They think it's voodoo, it's magic. Well, guess what happened to those people? you know, they end up, dying. And, the ones who are the innovators, the younger generation took advantage of that, and it's growing. Same thing is over here with AI technology. AI is basically a technology that is going to be a helpful tool. But if you don't start embracing it now, you're going to be left behind, and your competition will take advantage of the things you're missing out on. So don't delay, get started now.
Yeah, and there is some free AI courses, I think, as well, that Google and others have released. So you can get training fairly cheaply, if not free right now for a lot of this stuff. There's a lot of YouTube videos on using these models. So the barrier to entry is pretty cheap. Even the free chat GPT can help you with quite a bit, right? So it's
Yeah.
not a big investment. It's more the time and effort, right?
Yeah, there's universities, I believe, also offering courses for free or very inexpensive. There's books available. There's podcasts you can listen to. So plenty of resources to help you, get your feet wet a little bit and tip your toes into it and see whether or not it's something that's manageable. You'll be quite surprised. You'll find it so easy that you should have done it years ago.
Yeah.
And that's really what I look at. It's exciting time to
No,
be now.
it makes sense, and it's like taking the first step, right? The first week at the gym is always the hardest. So same sort of thing with this is getting your feet wet and being able to make some mistakes along the way too. Your first video is not going to be perfect, right? So I know for myself too, it's been a work in progress. You get better with time and practice, and just recording it. I guess the good thing is you can record it, delete it, and start over if you have a bad one.
That's the great thing about it. And same thing when it comes to books too. If your first book doesn't turn out to be great, sometimes it takes 2 or 3 revisions to get it to perfect. And that's really what it's all about. It's not about being perfect. It's just do it, and just get it out there and then work on it and get feedback from other people to see what their thoughts on it, and then use that criticism to help improve it. That's really what it's all about. And you'll find that, after you've done many books, it's just like second nature. You don't even think about it. You just get it done. And that's really the key to doing it. It's just like a bicycle, just get on it. You fall down a few times. Eventually, you'll land on your feet and you become, a great bike rider.
Yeah, no, it sounds good, and I think for everyone listening, it's now's the time to act, right? So they can go to your website, get a free LinkedIn guide. I think you have maybe read a copy of your book as well to give you some more insights, and
Yeah. And check out
listen
my
to our
podcast
podcast.
too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
The AI Authority Edge,
Nice.
available on Spotify and other places, Apple, I believe, as well. So yeah, check it out.
All right. Well, I appreciate you, and thanks for the chat.
Thank you, John. Appreciate the opportunity. Have a good one.